He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens. This powerful phrase by Carl Gustav Jung opens a door to a profound territory. A territory where truth is not hidden behind dogmas or appearances, but behind our own decision to see. And today, on this journey of inner exploration, we dare to confront a dark and ancient mystery: why alcohol devours your spirit, deteriorates your conscience, and destroys your soul. Let us consider for a moment the magnitude of what we are questioning. How many times have we heard that alcohol is just a drink, a social companion, a temporary escape? However, when we look beyond the everyday veil, when we allow ourselves to contemplate what esoteric traditions, Hermetic philosophy, and the sages of ancient civilizations tried to reveal, we discover that alcohol was never simply a liquid. It was always a symbol, a portal, a force capable of altering internal states that, over time, can consume that which most subtly defines us. Our spirit imagines that your consciousness is like a pure flame, a spark that connects your material existence with the higher planes of human experience. That spark needs clarity to grow. It needs energy to expand. It needs direction to illuminate you. But alcohol, according to ancient teachings dating back to Hermetic texts and contemporary analyses by thinkers like Rudolf Steiner and philosophers like Aldous Huxley, acts like a turbulent wind that extinguishes the inner flame, scatters its light, and breaks its essential harmony. Steiner claimed that certain substances alter the astral body of the human being, separating it from its spiritual center, and Huxley reflected on how chemical alterations can block natural access to inner gateways that lead to higher perception. Now consider what happens when this process is not a one-off occurrence but repeated, intensified and normalized. What happens when culture has transformed an agent of deterioration into an accepted habit? The answer may be uncomfortable, but it is profoundly necessary. Alcohol begins to gnaw at your sensitivity, erodes your ability to perceive profound nuances, fades your intuition, and slowly opens spiritual cracks where there was once strength. That's why so many ancient spiritual traditions understood it as a silent shadow, a symbolic entity that feeds on human disconnection. And before we continue, I invite you to imagine something else. Imagine that every choice you make builds or destroys your relationship with your own soul. Imagine that every sip, every excess, every apparent celebration you're hiding a gradual distancing from your true essence. We're not talking about morality. We're talking about the energy of vibrational consciousness. We're talking about that which allows you to understand life not as a sequence of events, but as a sacred experience. If this topic is already stirring something within you, if you already feel that this conversation is touching on rarely discussed aspects of your being, then now is the time to delve even deeper. But before that, I invite you to do something important. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like, comment and share this video, because what we're about to reveal can help you change the way you understand your life and your inner universe. And perhaps it can also help someone who is silently struggling with something they can't explain but feel deep within their being. Over the next few minutes, you'll discover truths rarely found in ordinary conversations. We'll reveal knowledge transmitted from Hermetic traditions, ancient philosophies, and contemporary analyses, which will allow you to understand the true spiritual cost of alcohol. And I promise you something, the final revelation will be the most powerful and transformative of all, the one that can open your eyes to a completely new understanding of your own spirit. Now ask yourself what part of yourself you have unknowingly given away, what inner voice you have silenced, what energy you have weakened in seeking momentary relief. Share in the comments what you feel you have lost or what you long to regain. What comes next? It will delve into how alcohol silently infiltrates the subtlest levels of your being, affecting not only your body, but also your energy field, your mental clarity, and your capacity for spiritual manifestation. To understand why alcohol progressively deteriorates your consciousness, we need to delve into teachings that span millennia, from Hermetic writings to the observations of contemporary mystics like Gorgiev. They all agree on something surprising: human consciousness is not a fixed state, but a delicate process in constant construction. And any element that interrupts this process not only disconnects you from your inner self, but also distances you from your deepest spiritual purpose. Think about it. Consciousness is like a finely tuned musical instrument. Every emotion, every thought, every intention acts as a note that vibrates within you. When your life is in balance, the melody flows, but alcohol introduces a noise that not only throws the instrument out of tune, but also interferes with the connection between the player and the person playing. And the instrument itself, that is, interferes between your higher self and your physical body, creating a disconnect that, according to teachers like Krishnamurti, prevents the mind from perceiving reality as it is. Imagine that your spirit is an antenna capable of capturing subtle signals, intuitions, deep perceptions, insights that reveal paths and decisions that you would otherwise never notice. But every time alcohol enters your body, that antenna becomes distorted. It begins to pick up noise, confusion, emotional distortion. Something becomes clouded, something breaks, something shifts towards disconnection. Many shamanic traditions warned that fermented substances opened invisible breaches through which dense energies could enter, weakening the will and making the mind more vulnerable. Now think about how many times in human history alcohol has been used not as a sacred ritual, but as a method to numb introspection. Even in ancient Egyptian writings, it was warned that excessive drinking unbalanced the life force. Medieval Arab philosophers, they pointed out that alcohol clouded the fitra, that inner purity with which every being is born. And thinkers like Arthur Schopenhauer affirmed that intoxication reduced the capacity for self-control, allowing the will to become chaotic, unpredictable, even destructive. But here comes something even deeper. Alcohol does not only act as a mental distraction, it acts as a vibrational reducer. According to esoteric teachings, everything in the universe vibrates, from the highest emotions to the darkest thoughts. When your inner vibration is high, you access more lucid, more creative, more connected states. However, alcohol lowers that vibration, densifies it, makes it heavy, and when your vibration drops, you not only lose spiritual clarity, you lose magnetism, you lose energetic protection, you lose purpose. Have you ever wondered why? After drinking, even if you do it socially, you feel a subtle emptiness, a strange tiredness, or an inner disconnection that's hard to explain. That feeling is the echo of the spirit reorganizing itself, attempting to recover its original form after being distorted. As described by psychologist William James, chemically altered experiences do not replace the authentic construction of consciousness. On the contrary, they often interrupt its natural development. And here an important reflection arises. What happens when this interruption is repeated week after week, year after year? Spiritual erosion is not sudden. It is cumulative. It is a silent loss, centimeter by centimeter. A gradual decrease in sensitivity, intuition, and clarity is like a veil being placed between you and your own light, making you forget who you were before this constant disconnection. Alcohol, by altering your perception, causes you to make decisions that don't stem from your essence, but from a distorted state. And each decision born from this disconnection takes you a little further from the path your soul truly desires. That's why so many spiritual seekers agree that alcohol not only affects the mind, but also one's life trajectory. It pushes you to places your spirit didn't want to be. It diverts you from authentic relationships. It distances you from your gifts. It turns you into a version of yourself that isn't the real you. Imagine for a moment how many versions of your life could exist if your conscience were clear, if your spirit were whole. If your soul hadn't been fragmented by repeated disconnections, how would you act? What relationships would you choose? What purpose would you awaken? These questions aren't simple. They're an invitation to observe what alcohol, it silently steals from you. And as we move toward even deeper revelations, I want to invite you to reflect and share in the comments what the greatest spiritual cost has been that you feel alcohol has taken on you or someone you love. Your story can help others awaken. What comes next will lead you to understand the most hidden level of alcohol's spiritual impact, the way it fragments your energy, weakens your inner connection, and distances you from your most sacred identity. Would you like me to continue with part 3? To delve even deeper into the profound mystery of how alcohol destroys your soul, we must understand a dimension that is rarely mentioned but has been discussed by mystics, philosophers, and scholars from various traditions. This dimension is energetic fragmentation, a concept that appears in Hermeticism, in the depth psychology of Carl Jung, in the teachings of Ouspensky, and in the writings of the Sufi master Idris Shah. All, from different perspectives, agree that the human being is a complex energetic field whose integrity is essential to maintain clarity, will, and spiritual connection. When that integrity is broken, something within the person weakens. Imagine that your soul is like a luminous fabric made up of fine, energetic threads that intertwine to support your spiritual identity. Each thread represents something essential: your deepest memories, your intuitions, your purpose, your capacity to love, your inner strength, your connection to the divine. Now imagine that every time you consume alcohol, even though it may seem harmless, it's as if an invisible hand were pulling those threads and scattering them. It doesn't break them completely in a single act, but rather loosens them, separates them from their original form. According to scholars like Mircea Eliade, this internal dispersion leads to a persistent feeling of emptiness, because human beings are not designed to function in a fragmented way. Many spiritual seekers who have delved into the paths of consciousness describe intoxication as a state where the soul slightly leaves the body, not literally. Instead of vibration, it shifts, loses its anchor, and when it shifts, it becomes vulnerable to external influences, dense emotions, self-destructive thoughts, and impulsive decisions born from a momentary disconnection, but whose effects can last for years. This concept appears even in traditions like Tibetan Buddhism, which describes chemically induced altered states as involuntary openings through which negative impressions filter, contaminating the mind when the soul fragments. She begins to experience a sense of incongruity. She feels divided. One part wants to move forward, another sabotages herself. One part wants to awaken spiritually, another wants to become dormant. One wants to connect deeply, another wants to escape. This internal duality is a sign that the essence is damaged. The psychologist Roberto Assagioli spoke of this phenomenon in terms of psychological dissociation, but he recognized that it was not merely a mental process, but a spiritual one. And here comes another crucial point. Alcohol weakens the will, not superficial willpower, but spiritual willpower, that inner strength that allows you to say no when you must say no, that drives you to change what needs changing, that sustains you in your darkest moments. In his work, the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche explained that willpower is not a simple desire but an internal drive that creates direction. When that drive weakens, the person loses the ability to guide their own steps. This explains why alcohol becomes a cycle. It weakens the will, and then by weakening it, the person feels unable to break the habit. Now they think about how many lives have been transformed not by great tragedies, but by small, repeated disconnections. Those nights when the person wasn't fully present, those moments when they reacted unconsciously, those decisions made from an altered state that changed the course of relationships, opportunities, and life paths. Each of those moments leaves small cracks in the essence, and with enough cracks, the spirit loses its original strength. But there is something even deeper. According to Hermetic teachings, human beings are constantly influenced by two internal forces, one that elevates them and another that pulls them toward the dense. When consciousness is clear, the elevating force dominates. But when the vibration lowers, the dense force takes control. Alcohol, with its anesthetic and depressant effect, activates that density. That is why so many ancient sages considered it a gateway to lower states of existence. Not because it was morally wrong, but because it diminishes the soul's capacity to vibrate in higher states. This is where a profound question arises. How many times in your life have you felt capable of so much more, but something inside you was turned off? How many times have you felt your spirit wanted to ascend, but your energy couldn't keep up? How many times have you caught yourself sabotaging your own dreams, as if an invisible force were dragging you down? I invite you to reflect in the comments on when you feel you've lost energy without understanding why. Scholars like Ken Wilber explain that human consciousness operates in layers, and that depressant substances can block access to higher levels. This means they not only disconnect you momentarily, but also prevent you from advancing spiritually. It's like trying to climb a mountain with a rope that breaks a little more each time you use it. And when you finally need to hold on, you discover it no longer has the strength you thought it did. As we continue to move toward the most important revelation, we must understand. It's not about judging, but about understanding how small decisions can shape destinies. How an action that seems insignificant can have profound energetic consequences. And above all, understanding that spiritual freedom is directly linked to clarity of consciousness. What we will reveal in the last part will be the final piece that connects this whole puzzle. Why alcohol not only affects your spirit, but also alters your relationship with the universe, with your purpose, and with your own inner divinity. At this point in our journey, we have already explored how alcohol fragments your energy, weakens your consciousness, and alters your spiritual vibration. However, the deepest mystery remains to be understood. The revelation that connects all the pieces and explains why alcohol not only affects you internally, but also interferes with your relationship with the universe, your existential purpose, and what the ancients called the divine spark. This revelation, according to esoteric scholars like René Guénon, does not reside in the visible, but in what vibrates behind every human experience. Now imagine the universe as a living organism, a field of pure intelligence where each being is a note within a cosmic symphony. And within that symphony, your spirit is a unique and unrepeatable vibration. That vibration determines your clarity, your intuition, your emotional strength, and your ability to manifest realities. The ancient Hermeticists taught that the human being is a bridge between planes. They can move toward the elevated or toward the dense, according to their internal state. When you are connected with yourself, that vibration aligns you with paths of growth and purpose. But when you lose connection, when your clarity becomes dull, when your energy drops, you become vulnerable to forces of disorder that divert your course. Herein lies the key. Alcohol breaks the vibrational coherence of the spirit. This coherence, mentioned by thinkers like David Bohm and by mystical traditions like Vedanta, is the quality that keeps your thoughts, emotions, and purpose aligned. When that coherence is broken, it disrupts it. Human beings enter a state of internal chaos, not a visible chaos, but a silent, almost imperceptible chaos that manifests in wrong decisions, toxic relationships, lack of direction, existential anxiety, and a persistent feeling of having lost something you can't name. And it is precisely there that the most powerful revelation lies. Alcohol interferes with the bridge that connects your soul to that which gives meaning to your existence. According to the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, human consciousness is like an antenna that captures inspiration. Purpose and universal wisdom exist. But an interfered antenna doesn't receive clear signals. It fills with noise, confusion, and emotional shadows. That's why after consuming alcohol, even days later, people often experience sadness, irritation, melancholy, or a feeling of emptiness. It's not a coincidence. It's the echo of spiritual disconnection, the effect of having temporarily distorted the internal antenna. Let's think about something even deeper. Every human being possesses what many traditions call an inner pact, a mission, a spiritual reason for being alive. That mission is not given from the outside, but from within. It is revealed in moments of clarity, in instants of intuition, in situations where your soul guides you. However, when consciousness is clouded by substances that lower your vibration, that inner pact becomes difficult to hear. You lose signs, you lose guidance, you lose direction, and often you waste years on paths that were not meant for you. Some scholars of consciousness, like Stanislav Grof, have pointed out that the human spirit seeks. States of expansion are constantly experienced. However, when that expansion is blocked, the person seeks external substitutes, small, momentary gratifications that do not fill the real void. Alcohol thus becomes a substitute for transcendence, an illusory attempt to reach an altered state without having done the inner work. But an altered state without consciousness does not open elevated doors. On the contrary, it can open portals to dense emotions, to self-destruction, to the loss of control. And here arises the most important point of all. Alcohol doesn't destroy your soul because it has some intrinsic mystical power. The destruction occurs because it distances you from your essence, from your truth, from your capacity to create, to feel deeply, to see clearly. The soul doesn't die, but it weakens. It closes, it hides, it withdraws. And when the soul withdraws, life loses its luster, loses its depth, loses its meaning, not because the world is dark, but because the inner light has been covered by layers of disconnection. Now think about what your existence would be like if you were to recover that light, if your vibration were to rise again, if your soul were to regain its original integrity. How would your relationships, your decisions, your destiny change? True spiritual transformation doesn't happen through external imposition, but through inner clarity, through awakening, through remembering who you were before the disconnection. And that awakening begins by recovering your energy, your presence, your vibrational coherence. At this final point, I want to invite you to reflect deeply on what you could achieve if you recovered all the parts of your spirit that you have been losing in moments of distraction, pain, or misguided searching. What version of yourself is waiting to be released when you recover your original connection with the divine that dwells within you? Share in the comments what you feel you could conquer if your spirit were to vibrate with all its strength again. This journey is not a condemnation, it is a calling, a reminder that your soul was born to expand, not to be extinguished, to rise, not to be chained, to awaken, not to be anesthetized. And now that you know the profound truth of how alcohol devours your inner light, you also know the path to reclaim all that is rightfully yours spiritually. Your true transformation begins when you decide to return to yourself. Thank you for watching.